the IDF does not open fire against ambulances, except for the rare occasion where that ambulance is posing an immediate threat and opening and firing against them. Or if a terrorist with an RPG exit an ambulance, which sadly is something that happens in Gaza, then we have to operate against it. But generally speaking, our policy is not to attack ambulances. We did not, and that same night, there were ambulances passing by that we did not attack. And part of the reason we opened this examination, very clear for us, is we do not attack ambulances.
Now, it's nearly a month since an attack by Israel killed 14 emergency workers and a UN employee in Gaza. The Israeli Defense Forces originally said their troops opened fire, believing they were facing a threat from enemy forces. But now a new report released by the IDF says an operational misunderstanding and a breach of orders led to their deaths. The deputy commander of the unit involved has been dismissed. Well, Lieutenant Colonel Nadav Shoshani is from the IDF and joins me now. Good morning.
Good morning, Hugo. And first I want to send my condolences to the many people around the world who are sad of the news of Pope Francis passing away today.
Thank you. I'm sure that'll be appreciated. Coming to this story, the deputy commander, as I said, was fired for an inaccurate report. What was inaccurate about the report?
Well, first I want to give the context of what happened, and it's very important and interesting. The IDF, and this is part of our values and part of how we act. When there is an incident like the one that happened approximately a month ago, we start investigating ourselves. And in this case, the Chief of General Staff decided to order this independent investigation, a special mechanism that is independent from the chain of command to investigate into this incident, to have a formal examination of this incident, to go down to the field, to interview the people, to see the actual spot where things happened, to go over all the surveillance videos and all the information we had, and to make sure we look into this. We look into this, one, to understand what happened, to learn from it, to make sure it doesn't happen again, and to hold those accountable. And that is exactly what we did in this case. Not just the deputy commander, who's a major, but also a colonel, a very senior commander, was reprimanded for this incident. Part of it is for not giving the full picture of the operational incident in real time, which is a problem. And for us as IDF, we always make sure to say the truth in a coherent way, in a way that is transparent and honest, especially in these type of difficult situations. And this is what we did, and this is what we did now. And we weren't able to do it in the beginning because of a partial and faulty account of what happened. That was part of the reason for the punishment, but also a breach of our rules of conduct. The IDF obviously does not attack paramedics or ambulances. It doesn't matter that part of the people in there were Hamas members. The IDF does not attack ambulances unless they are posing an immediate threat on us, like Hamas has done. I mean, this is something.
I understand, but I asked you quite a clear question. He was fired for an inaccurate report. So I'll ask you again, what was inaccurate about the report? What did he say that wasn't true?
So again, I want to say this was investigated by this independent mechanism that held this examination for a few weeks now, and it will be investigated further by the MAG, by the Israeli Attorney General of the IDF. Yep. So I can't go into all the specific. We can say that part of the information that he gave was faulty. He also did not give the full picture of what happened. In this examination.
I'm sorry, I understand what you're saying, but when you say faulty, what do you mean faulty? Do you mean he lied in his report? Is that what you're telling me?
Well, we can't speak of the reasoning of the person, but we saw when we examined ourselves, and that's what we do, that part of the information that was put out initially was not correct. They later on corrected it. Some of the information got lost in the chain of command, and that is also something that will be further investigated by the Attorney General.
Okay, so look, after these people were killed, IDF forces crushed the vehicles and buried the bodies in shallow graves. Would that have been had the people being attacked here been who supposedly it was imagined they were? Would that have been normal practice?
No, and this was not a cover-up or anything trying to hide. On the same day, this incident was communicated with the international organizations, calling them to the spot. And the reason they did it is very harsh and sad to speak about in the reality of war, but they did it to cover up the bodies, to make sure that they are not getting abused by wild animals, which is something that sadly happens sometimes in the field. And they marked the spot so that people can come and rescue them later. And they communicated with the international organizations the same day. But also that, and we put that in writing in a very transparent way and held the people accountable, saying the crushing of the cars and that process was faulty. And the people were held accountable. The IDF held an examination of itself and said what happened in a very transparent and on record way in writing, and it's important for us. You know, we're a moral army. When mistakes happen, and sadly they happen in war, we have to do our best to fix them, to hold the people accountable, to make sure we examine it.
I understand. I understand. The ambulances that were attacked had their lights flashing at the time. There is footage of that. How could this possibly have gone so wrong?
Well, the situation is a very hard situation. These are young people in the battlefield that have seen Hamas use ambulances throughout the war. Some of the people on where they were stationed, and again, this examination team did a reenactment and also went down to the same spot. Some of the people cannot see all the details. In the aerial footage, they uses thermal cameras could not see the lights, and that's part of the examination. But again, the results are not anything that stands with our values, and this is why we held the examination and why we held the people accountable. Okay. And it's important to understand, and I'm sure not me, I'm a spokesperson, and not you. We haven't been there in that spot in a battlefield under fire, under risk of your own life, operating against a terror organization that has used ambulances in the past, operating in an area where you have recently seen terrorists that same night,
Yep.
in an area of people who have been fighting. So it's a very harsh reality, but we want to hold ourselves to a high standard to make sure this doesn't happen again and to make sure we learn from our mistakes.
A spokesperson for the Red Crescent says that the sacking of this officer shifts responsibility to a personal error in the field of command when the truth is quite different. I mean, what is the established policy for when faced with ambulances with their lights flashing? There has been some suggestion that the soldiers might have feared these ambulances were being used by Hamas soldiers. Doesn't this leave anybody driving an ambulance in Gaza in fear of their life from the IDF?
Well, absolutely not, and the facts are very clear, and we've also showed it to many reporters in Israel where we could communicate it with. In the same night, in that same incident, ambulances with lights passed by. So there's a mistake of recognition. The people felt threatened. They thought they were acting against a threat that was coming against them. But in the same night, on the same route, with the same forces, ambulance and civilians passed. And the forces did not open in fire. They were not firing indiscriminately. They were acting in an operational way, in an operational manner with obviously mistakes, tragic mistakes. But mistakes. The IDF does not target ambulances, and the IDF did not target ambulances in that night. And I think it comes to show to our values. The minute this happened, we decided to open with an examination because we understood ambulances were attacked. I think our policy is very clear. The IDF does not open fire against ambulances, except for the rare occasion where that ambulance is posing an immediate threat and opening and firing against them. If a terrorist with an RPG exit an ambulance, which sadly is something that happens in Gaza, then we have to operate against it. But generally speaking, our policy is not to attack ambulances. We did not, and that same night, there were ambulances passing by that we did not attack. Mm-hmm. And part of the reason we opened this examination, very clear for us, is we do not attack ambulances.
Would this new explanation have emerged if it wasn't for journalists pointing out the flaws in the original explanation?
Well, I think my job, and I try to do my best to communicate with journalism, and I value journalists, and I think it's an important part for us. We endorse it and appreciate it. We started examining this incident immediately. So I think obviously I work with the reporters. I appreciate their work, and I think it's very important. I think it's very important for both sides. I think there's a lot of lies and miscommunication coming out of Gaza and the Gaza so-called health ministry that reporters needs to reveal. And we also accept challenges from reporters to our job. I think it makes us better. It makes us more responsible. And for us as an army, and our values, we want to be accountable. We have to be accurate. And if reporters help do that, that's great. But in this case, an examination was opened immediately after the incident. And it was important for us, for our sake, for our values, to make sure we look into this incident, that we do better, we learn what happened, we hold people accountable if we need to.
Understood.
And make sure this doesn't happen again.
Will the IDF be apologising to the families of the aid workers who died, and will there be any other follow-up from this other than one person losing their job?
Well, there was a person losing their job and a senior commander being reprimanded, and there's a process now of learning from what happened, implementing the lessons, making sure the troops on the ground learn from them moving forward. And obviously, we have connections with international organizations. We communicate with them directly. And I can speak of that because that's other people communicating that and doing that, but we do that in different occasions. We've had that process lead to direct conversation if needed. I think that's up to the organizations working with their counterparts in the IDF. We have a large section of people who are in charge of that to make sure we are working alongside with those international organizations, that we are talking to them directly. And also in this case, we are communicating directly with those international organizations, telling them of our values, telling them of the results of the examination, and communicating further whatever needed.
You'll have to forgive me. I missed whether you said there'd be an apology to the families or not.
I said there's other people communicating with organizations. They are holding direct conversations with the international organizations. If that's needed or brought up, that might happen. I don't know. It has happened in past occasions in certain situations. And it's not for me to speak of because there are direct conversations between those people and the organizations and their counterparts in the IDF.
Lieutenant Colonel Nadav Shoshani from the IDF, thank you very much indeed for being with us.